Hey everybody, so Professor Gilliland asked me to just make a short video recapping, my strategy this semester, creating my own brand on social media, what platforms I used and other things and tips and tricks sort of for creating your own personal story on social media throughout the semester. So I have a little presentation here I'll get into because I think that's the best way to sort of explain what I did. But yeah, so we'll just hop right into it. So the first thing, this is actually a picture of a slide from one of Professor Golan's lectures, and it was just talking about how you create personal branding, right? So you want to have three different sort of parts of your personality, three different angles, if you will, and you want to find that sweet spot of that competitive advantage in the middle, because there's so much content on social media. You can't just focus on one thing. Like, let's say I like sports, which I'll get into later. I couldn't just focus on sports because there's a million sports accounts and a million other types of sporting competition accounts and things like that. So it was about finding that sweet spot or that competitive advantage. So early on in the semester, I actually went through this exercise with myself. And these are sort of the things I came up with. So I was interested in sports and sports franchises. Obviously, I'd done some internships with sports franchises and at TCU around sports. So that was good. Management and leadership positions, that's something I'm interested in as well. I've always sort of wanted to be in management, and then that within the sports world as well is something that's important. And then, early career and development as a young professional. So I talked about that a little bit. I'm at the time where I'm doing internships and trying to learn about the industry and get opportunities as much as I can. And I think that was something that was really unique to my profile in terms of, early career as a young professional in sports. That was something I hadn't really seen. And I think that's why, the strategy worked so well to begin with. So kind of moving on from that, my strategy, now that I sort of had my brand goal, was to always move in my post from like a general sports anecdote or an interest or something, a current event of mine, something we talked about in class, maybe, into sort of how that current event, sports anecdote, whatever, relates to being, professional sports, like the lesson you could take away from that. So I'm going to focus on my LinkedIn because I think it did this better a little, more than my Instagram, but my Instagram is something, that if you're interested, you can go follow as well. So here's an example of that, in my LinkedIn. So this is, talking about, I'd always started with a hook. So is social media helpful or harmful? Sort of, is that a fair question? Whatever, go through all the tags, all the things. And then if you look at the very bottom, it says, do your best to use social media to your advantage. Before you hit post, think about how it could affect your personal brand and the image of your employer. So with this post, I included an example of like Houston Rockets posting something that got them in trouble. So just reminding, other young professionals that may be in the social media space, in the sports space, don't post something that you don't want to be seen that could hurt your brand that you're working for image. And right, so, there's more examples of this throughout my LinkedIn, but this one's talking about, Facebook being relevant because that's something we talked about in class. And then I moved into, as you move into the world of sports, be sure to keep in mind the importance of platforms like Facebook. And that's was the formula for all of my posts on my LinkedIn, and it worked well. So what's the best content to post on social media? You go through all the tags, you include some current events, like the NFL, some relevant tags. And then, again, starting with pulling them in at the end, saying, literally quoting, for all my young professionals out there, familiarize yourself with analytics provided by these platforms because it's going to be important going forward. So the last one, again, was something we talked about in class. Colin gave a good presentation on algorithms, and then he moved. So I went through all of it and then moved into, that's another thing you need to understand as a young professional, because that's going to be important to your career moving forward. So that was kind of the main thing. That was my strategy, and those are some examples. So kind of moving back now into sort of overall what I learned in my main lessons and takeaways. I think, my main overall lesson that I learned was that this social media stuff works. So I'll be honest, at the beginning of the semester, I know some of the stuff Professor Golan was saying, I was super unsure about it. And I was like, I don't know, like I'm gonna have to make a LinkedIn, like an Instagram. Oh my gosh, like rolling my eyes. And I got pretty good engagement from it, especially on my LinkedIn. So I think the biggest lesson I learned is that this stuff is important, especially as coming out of college right now and being young professionals in the communications industry. It's something that you need to start looking at and you need to start paying attention to. And a lot of the tips in this class can help you do that. And I think, that was probably the biggest takeaway I had overall. The biggest story I had, on my LinkedIn was I had an employer that I was applying for an internship in sports, and she was sort of unsure. She's like, I don't know if we have positions open, whatever, things like that. And she actually connected with me on LinkedIn, liked a bunch of my LinkedIn posts and things like that. And then, got back to me a few months later and was like, we'll find something for you, whether it's now or later, because she's like, you obviously know the industry and know how it's going. So, this is real stuff. It's actually helpful to your brand and your career moving forward. And so I encourage you all to look into it. So that's sort of my lessons from the semester. I hope this gets use in future semesters, and yeah, go Frogs.